Hi, my name is Cheri. Welcome to my Stampin' Up! Studio. Today I'm just going to do a simple how-to video. We're not going to end up with any project. I'm going to do several of these because during COVID, people have found a renewed love for crafting. And so some of you have hopped in, some of you have friends, and I've gotten emails from people who already know how to do a lot of this stuff, but then they have friends who they can't actually see in person, but they are crafting with via Zoom or something. And they're like, do you have any? And they go back to a basic. And when I started my YouTube channel a couple of years ago, I kind of just went in to show my customers who were coming to camps and things how to do some of the stuff that they were going to do when they got here. And they already knew the basics. So I never actually did, this is how you simply do that. And for one, people might not think that embossing's where you start, but I've been stamping for almost 30 years. And when I first started stamping, all I had was an embossing pad, some black embossing powder, some gold embossing powder, and 3 colors of watercolor pencils. And then when I started with Stampin' Up, I added a black pad and a couple of other pads. Stampin' Up didn't have their own colors. And so then when we got our own colors, I don't remember, maybe we had 40. And I remember thinking, why in the world would I want 40 colors of ink? Which is laughable now. And they gave us a little coupon for a Christmas gift back then, and we were able to get them at a big discount if we wanted them all. And I was like, I will never use more than one color of blue. So I picked my favorite of the blues at the time. So, you know, embossing to me is the way I started. It's come a long way in the years, like we didn't even have an actual tool. So if you want to do something that's really impressive, it is a fun way to start. So I'm just going to show you what's available in the catalog now, because embossing stuff kind of changes. You can tell by my labels. I have some really old labels over there. Once you have the basics, then as stuff changes, you can kind of keep it. I have several variations of our heat tool, but this is the one that we have now. So you do need a heat tool. And then once you have it, this will last forever. If you ever need to strip some paint, or if your refrigerator needs a little defrosting, this will come in handy for some other things. You cannot use a hairdryer. It doesn't get hot enough and it blows too much air. So you can't skimp on that. There are some other things that you could use that we used to use back in the day. This is so much easier. So if you want to emboss, just get the heat tool. If you don't have one and you want to wait till when Stampin' Up! Has their celebration times of year, which are in January and then again in the summer, it's $30 if you're in the US market. Then you would be able to add something to it and get a free product as well. Then you need a embossing pad. And there's different ways that you can go about embossing. This is the easiest. So because this is Embossing 101, once you have all this, and then you watch my videos where we do something else with embossing things, but this is what you need. And it's a Versamark, still on this same page. I'm on page 146 of the catalog. If you don't have one of our big catalogs, then let me know. I'd be happy to send you one. So this is a Versamark pad, and then it does come with a little refill. So when you get them, this is the whitest one I have. Over time, they will get dirty and they'll be black. But that's just because it picks up stuff, residual ink that may be on your stamp. It does have a refill that you can get, as long as you never let it go rock solid hard. Because sometimes, you know, if something gets on it, because you can see little dots of stuff I've gotten on mine, because stuff just gets dirty over time and it transfers on there. And some of mine are as black can be. You can take them to the sink and rinse them out and then let them dry, almost dry, and then just fill them back up with this little refill. So the Versamark pad is $9.50. And then the refill is $6. And you can see the refill doesn't take hardly any. You just kind of mudge it in there. It's a thick ink and it's kind of sticky. And you can also use it for a watermark ink. So once you have this, our cardstock now comes in 48 regular colors, and then we have 12 or 10 rotating colors every year, and I have to have them all. But like if you're stamping on navy with this, just with the stamp pad, then it just makes a little bit darker of a navy. So it's kind of a watermark shadow effect. So for every color of cardstock you have, once you have this, you can also just use it for a watermark kind of stamp. But once you have the refill and you have this pad, this should last you for years and years and years. So then you also need to choose what colors of powder you have. Gold is always a favorite. My personal favorite is copper. We don't have that right now, but it comes and goes. It kind of goes with the trends. So we had it last year, and for some reason, copper, I think, is always the #1 metal. But right now we don't have it. It will come back. Sometimes we have them with glitter. Right now we don't. Right now, they must think embossing's kind of not the thing at the moment because our selection's kind of small. Sometimes we have them in like reds and blues and greens. So it just kind of depends. So if you're just starting, it kind of makes it easy for you right now because we have white, clear, gold, and silver. And those are really the basics. And those you'll use all year round. I will tell you, if you are ever doing like what I've done in the past, here's a full one. So, the clear looks whiter than and the white looks like vanilla when it melts, because in the past I have been using them both at once and I've taken the lid off. And then I'm like, well, now I have to emboss something to see what color I'm using. And then the gold. So now let me just show you how to emboss, because sometimes people don't get a clear image. So #1, you have to have good embossing powder. If you buy this stuff from a dollar spot someplace and it doesn't look pretty, then just remember you get what you pay for. And our embossing powder is not expensive and it will last. You can tell. I do lots of classes. I have people in my home. We use lots of the powders. I take the powders places, and this is our logo. This is our current logo. This is a couple of times ago because we've had green since then, because you're going to scoop it all back in there and it lasts for a long time. So just spend another $1 and get something that's going to be beautiful. Then you need a piece of scrap paper. This is my favorite of our scrap papers. We have a giant. And you can just use typing paper. But this one is always there on the table and you're not tempted to use another piece of cardstock. Some of you may be laughing if you watch my channel because sometimes it's not where I can reach it and I do use another piece of cardstock. So your ink pad needs to be well inked. If you aren't getting a great impression, it may be because your ink pad's not inked. If it's dry at all, because it's clear, it's kind of hard to see. So I'm gonna use this really pretty vase, and this is out of the Boho Indigo kit that we have. I just finished a class and we embossed in it, and I thought, oh, this is really pretty. I'm going to use this when I do my embossing class because it has some fun lines in it. And there's 3 different vases, so I'll be able to show you 3 different things. So here is this. So you can see what I mean. You can't see it. I can see it, like you can angle it in the light. This is a technique that's easier to do on a beautiful sunny day. So now you're just gonna pour your powder on here. You wanna make sure your hands, like don't put lotion on your hands. Don't just go wash your hands and have them a bit damp. You want your hands nice and dry, because any fingerprints or anything that's on your cardstock, the embossing powder is gonna stick to that too, because it sticks to anything wet. So if any place on here it didn't stamp properly, if your pad wasn't well inked enough that it already stamped well, because I mean, you just have to think about it. Your image has to be great so the powder can stick to a great image, right? Then you have a few minutes, like if you're making your Christmas cards, or you're making some wedding invitations, you could probably do 10, 12 of those if you work fairly quickly. But you can't let it sit there for an hour. You can't go have somebody ring the doorbell and then go down and have a 2-hour conversation with your neighbor and come back up here and think, now I'm gonna go, because that will dry. Now you need to heat it. So I want you to take a little look, because this is Embossing 101. So it's pretty because I like old metals, but that's not how it's supposed to look. So the goal is, I'm going to turn this on because it needs a second to get warm. The goal is for it to be nice and raised up and for it all to be heated. So to get it to be raised up, it just needs to be melted. If you keep melting, then it's going to melt it. So the idea is to get it embossed, but not to be melted. If it goes too long, then it's going to be more melted than you want it to be. So it's easier to hold your gun in one spot, and then when you see it melt, that's why I chose black cardstock. See right here where it's turning colors? I'll do a little bit. That's why it's easier. I see people wave their embossing gun. Don't wave your gun, because all you're doing is getting some bits in some places. But you can see some's melted, some's not. So put it as it melts in one spot, then just move it. The gun gets super hot, so you always want to make sure you're aiming it away from you. And see, if you're doing this, then some of it's getting melted and some of it's not. So don't wave. And then you should have a nice clear image. If you've had little splatters go all over your card, then those are gonna melt because those would melt wherever. That's why you want your cardstock to be nice and dry. Your hands not to have touched it all. Like if you folded your cardstock into folds, then don't like smush all over it. Use either a bone folder or a piece of paper on top of it so your hands aren't getting oils all over your card. Then if any of this is still dusty, because it's like a powder, and you go to touch it, it's going to rub right off. And then you're gonna be like, well, I thought I stamped that. I thought it looked really good. And you may have stamped it well, and you may have gotten the powder on it, but if the powder didn't heat and stick to it, then when you do this, it's just going to wipe right off. So there's the gold, and I hope that you can see that really well. That's why I chose black. So let's do a white, because if you were doing this on another color of cardstock, which I'm gonna go again with the black, just because you can see it. But if you were gonna do this on white, cardstock with white, then you could color these designs. So again, make sure it's nice and inked. You also don't want to, it goes back to Stamping 101. When we stamp, we press straight down and straight up. You don't wobble all around, because if you wobble all around, you're going to catch all of your edges. And if that ink is on there from all around your edges, especially on your sentiments, then your embossing powder is going to be all around the edges. And then you can take a fine paintbrush and get it off. But it's easier just to stamp properly in the first place. Okay, now here's another tip. This is the side I just used for the gold, and you can see there's gold on here. And sometimes on our cards we have more than one piece, or some of us are super cheap and we don't like to get a new piece of scrap paper. So if I pour this on here now and I pour it back in, my white has gone from pretty white to white with tiny flecks of gold, which you may forget, and then later you're like, why does my embossing look dirty? So make sure that you're using a fresh piece of scrap paper, and that could mean for any little other things that are laying on your desk. So see, this one's a little bit easier to see, the white. So you can see the pretty pattern. There's a couple of little flecks there. The Versamark, well inked, holds on to it really well. So you can turn this around and kind of flick it and see all this came off. So just hit it really hard with your hand. As long as your pad's inked well, everything's going to come off that didn't have something holding it on. It will come off. And then hopefully this one will also be really easy to see when I melt. And the longer you use your gun, like if you're making Christmas cards or wedding invitations or something, the longer the gun goes, the faster everything starts to heat because the gun's hot. Old-fashioned guns didn't used to have safety features, so they heated up really fast. So see, you can see now the top is all melted, and that bottom, if I was to stop now, and rub that bottom, then that would just rub right off. So see right there? You need it all. So anytime, I find it's the edges of stuff that people don't heat well, because they think, especially if they're wavers when they emboss, but they think it looks good. And then you just take it, it's best if you have a window and some natural light, and just kind of look at all of it. If you have to take your glasses off, if you're my age, then do that and just get a nice good look at it. So there we have two really pretty faces. If you like the Boho Indigo set and you buy that kit, I do have a class. It's finished, but all the projects are there, and it's just a free class when you buy the Boho Indigo. Now for this next one, I'm going to show you how to use the clear. We're just going to take it up a notch. I'm going to switch to another piece of scrap paper. So this is from the Boho Indigo, and for this, I took blends and I just colored on some shimmer white cardstock, and I ran it through. Here's the one that was on our class project. We did it in greens. This time I did it in blues. Well, I did it in blues, and then I didn't want it on the card. So it's one of, if you watch my videos, you know I do series on what was laying on your desk. So this is one that if you're gonna do this on a card, you'd have to go wash your hands. So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna pop it on here, and then I'm just gonna press and get this nice and inked up. This is a fun way to make some embellishments for your cards. I'm gonna lay that over, and then I'm going to grab my clear. You can see it looks just like the white. Dump this on here. And you can always be super generous because everything you're not using is going right back in your jar. And just pick this up. I don't want to touch it with my hand that has the verse mark on it. Well, I'm trying to do it so you can see it. It would be easier if I just did it. So you can tump it all off. I'm not going to tump it all off. See that little piece right there? I'm just gonna leave that on there. And then you could move it to one of our, I should have got it out. I can probably reach one. Another nice tool to have is one of our silicone craft sheets. And these are also in the catalog. And it's just literally a piece of silicone, and you can use these for a lot of things. You can use them in the Stamparatus. You can use them for when you use hot glue or when you emboss. It just protects your table. So now I'm going to heat this, and it's going to make it look like glass. Now it will blow a little bit of it off, so I'm going to kind of angle it up. Whoops, I should have held on to it. You can also put it in a, like on a paper plate, so it has the sides up. So I got that there. You don't want to hold it forever on the silicone because it could melt, but you can see it hasn't melted bad, but it has melted on my paper. Now that it's stuck to it, I can keep just using it like this. So I'm just gonna kind of get it nice and thick to make it kind of look like glass. And every time you can just kind of lay it there now and just kind of build that up. This way you will use more embossing powder than any other, well, not any other way, but more than just embossing. And it dries really quickly. So you can see how pretty that is. It does, I mean, it really looks like a piece of porcelain or glass or something shiny, and it makes a really fun embellishment to go on your card. So I've got that. Get that back in there. And then just take a paintbrush, just a cheap acrylic brush or paintbrush, and put that in there. And I'm going to show you one more thing for Embossing 101. And this is when you do impression embossing. So we're going to do it the opposite. And let's use the gold again. So this time I'm going to add just some straight Versamark onto my card to kind of hold the powder in place. I'm going to grab, this is the poinsettia. These are all things that I've used recently. This was in our Christmas prep class. So I'm gonna go ahead and get some ink on it so it's ready. And you can see it was a tiny bit dirty right there, and now I've got a tiny bit of dirty on there. I thought it was all the way clean, but apparently I didn't clean it. So I'm gonna pour a little bit here. And this time I'm gonna heat my embossing powder from the underside. And it takes it longer to melt because it's a lot and it's going from the back. This is really fun to make like dog tags or like Greek or Roman kind of money things. It's fun at Christmas. So you can see it's melting. And of course, because it's more in the center, it will take it a little bit longer there. Get it nice and melted. And then when it's almost all the way and it's not going to blow away, if you did it from the top, it would all just blow away because there's not enough in that middle part to hold it. So just give it one wave here to make sure all that on the edges is still nice and warm. And then just take your stamp. That's why I put the Versamark on it so it doesn't stick. And just lightly press it down in there. Hold it just for a second because you don't want it to be all the way hot when you pull up. You want it to hold its shape. And then pull it up. And it gives like, again, if you're my age, you may have had one of those little wax melting signature with your initial on it that you used to do on your letters when you were a teenager. So here you go. There's just basic gold and white. And there's if you want to kind of give it a fun embellishment. And here is if you want to do like a wax seal. So many fun things. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of what you can do. But it's really the basics and all really easy. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you need any help putting together a beginning embossing pack, I'd be happy to help you do that too. So everybody have a great day. Bye.